Okay, you guys are now live.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, so welcome to
Okay, you
this.
guys are now live. Let me mute
Thanks,
that real
Tim.
quick.
All right, so welcome to
Okay, you
this.
guys are now live. There you go. You're good.
We got rid of the feedback now?
Yep.
Good. All right, so welcome to this special meeting of the Webster Groves School District Board of Education. The board will, you've seen from the agenda, primary purpose of this evening's meeting is to discuss some revised proposals that have been offered on the opening, the potential to open the Walter Ambrose Family Center at the beginning of the year. And we have some other matters as well to discuss. Vice President Jo Dahl sends her apologies that she can't be here. This meeting's been scheduled at short notice, and she is unfortunate she is unable to attend. And Amy Clendenin will be joining us as soon as she can manage to get in. She's been having some technical difficulties, but we're going to get going. So first, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
David, may I ask that we flip agenda items 3.01 and 4.01? I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second for that?
Second.
Thank you. All those, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody
Aye.
opposed? Okay, so in that case, we will do that. Okay, good, thank you very much. So with that amendment in place, can I now have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. I would draw everybody's attention to the correspondence log. Again, we don't have an opportunity, or we don't have public comment as such here. However, we do encourage members of the public who wish to register to send in correspondence. All letters received by the board go into the correspondence log, and they all are recorded as a part of the public comments. So I'd invite everybody. I know the board members have been reading those as they come in. Just remind you again that that includes public comment, a number of which are related to the issue that we have in front of us today. So as amended, the first item then is reports from the superintendent and staff, the Walter Ambrose Family Center opening. John.
Good evening to everybody. I'm excited to be here tonight with my team, and joining us on the line is Marty Baker, the director of all the Walter Ambrose family programming, including the preschool. And what we wanted to come back tonight, the last time we were together, we made a recommendation for the center. And as I was listening to people, as we were listening to people, and just listening to the feedback that was being given, we listened to that feedback and kind of went back to thinking about that, ultimately going to the drawing board with, I would say, your feedback, I would say some conceptual feedback from the teachers of the center, as well as our team. And we tonight want to offer a revised proposal articulating what the differences are between the initial one we shared on July 21st and this one with the board. You've each had an opportunity to review the document, but I created a presentation for you just to go over some of those things. Included in the presentation, well, I'll just kind of go for it here.
Please.
Here we go. All right, do you see the screen that says return to the Walter Ambrose Center?
Yes.
Okay, just kind of starting off with some of the rationale. Some of the are similar to what I offered last time. Some have been modified or added. Again, first of all, that we can't justly serve our preschool children, including our most vulnerable, from a virtual setting. That while still as much is being learned about the virus, the data currently continues to demonstrate that our children are our youngest children are least affected by it. We last time proposed a staffing structure and a reduced enrollment from what is typical there. And to me, in listening and even observing, that was one of the things that was giving people some significant pause, is that the numbers weren't low enough for operating a program like this. And so we have made changes to that, and I'll speak to that a little bit more in a moment. The continuity of the program, giving the staffing structure, even with some of the modifications we'll articulate tonight, does lend itself much better than the K-12 environment to continuing program should we have an adult absence for any reason. The team at the Ambrosia Center put together a great plan for reentry that aligns very well with our district level for reentry to keep our kids and our families and everyone safe. While its impact won't be known possibly for some time, one of the rationale too for opening is the possible impact on the program itself at the Walter Ambrose Family Center. And then one thing too is that unlike in the K-12 setting, that the families sign up for the programs by choice at Walter Ambrose. So one of the biggest things that we did since we talked, we've kind of gone back and simmered on the class sizes. And as part of that, reached out to other districts regarding their class size limits. And speaking with some of the school districts touching us, so to speak, Kirkwood, Lindbergh, and Ladue, each who had early years programming during the summertime, preschools were open. We, with some of our thought, with consideration of what they were doing with much success over the summertime and will continue into the fall, as we adjusted our numbers even more significantly. And so you can see on that screen, licensed enrollment in those rooms. For the twos is 13. A couple of weeks ago, we proposed 12. Our current proposal has that down to 6 kids in each of the 2-year-old rooms. The proposals for the full day, last time around, it was 16, down from 20. We cut to 16 and a half to make it 8. The 3-5 half day, which is a co-taught space with SSD and general education students, we didn't drop that as much for a couple of reasons. One, we want to serve as many of our children with special needs. They use the language of special rights at the Walter Ambrose Family Center, and looking at 6 to 7 of those kids. And part of the structure of that program is that it has kids who also are not receiving support and services through IEPs. I noted in the document that I shared that there is flexibility with that number, and that could be reduced, but we feel good about that particular class size. And then lastly, the half-day early childhood special education, those are, that room has had both special ed students, students receiving special education services, and general ed students, but we reduced that number from 12 down to 6 and have those rooms being exclusively students receiving special ed, again, with considerations of numbers and staffing. Another thing that was really key to you all, and I continue to appreciate it, is just your empathy and the thoughts regarding the teachers and the respect and the staff, with respect of knowing that the situation at the center is a little bit different than in some of our other settings. And Marty last time was able to articulate well some of the thoughts and feelings of the staff. I did a little bit. Most of mine learned through Marty. But also most recently, Dr. Wiley and Marty met with the staff regarding what we're sharing with you tonight. And so I'm going to invite Sandy to share her perspective regarding where staff are with this particular proposal. and certainly invite Marty to jump in at any point too. So Dr. Wiley?
Well, we met with the Ambrosia staff yesterday. Marty and I had a Zoom call with them for a period of time and answered their questions, kind of went through the options that the board has been made aware of. And we answered some questions. Some were related to their own personal matters and their beliefs, and then others were, a majority of them were about the center and what returning would mean or what it would feel like. To be honest, most of them, when we asked the question, because we did ask them, option one, with regard to students returning, would you guys be there? What are your thoughts? And truthfully, to be honest, again, some of the staff were a little bit nervous, and rightfully so. We have all kind of been told to stay away from people, and now we have this concept of drawing nearer to people. And so that, of course, raises anxiety and worry. But for the most part, I could say that the staff there were in agreement with returning. We talked a lot about the processes and steps that we would put in place, cleaning the building, staff being in the room by themselves, and what overlap could look like or what it would look like, and how we would ensure that we minimize visitors. There was a lot that we talked through to help them understand the structures that we would put in place to keep everyone as safe as we possibly can. And while, again, I cannot, say enough, the staff was wonderful and very gracious in sharing their worries, but I think holistically they know and want to return back and be with their kids. That was very important for them. There were some questions about, the number, and, we can't allow everybody in, and, what does that mean, and what does that look like for some of our families? So their wonderings were also centered around the community and being able to serve as many kids as they can, but knowing that there are some restrictions with that right now. So when I say Marty has an awesome staff, they were not only considering themselves, but they were also being mindful of the community and how we can better serve. But I would say that holistically, they are a group that will partner with Marty and do whatever they have to do for the benefit of the kids returning in August or September or whatever that date is. I don't know if Marty, if you want to share anything that I failed to mention.
Sandy, I think you really covered it. One of the things that we have planned during this opening professional development week is an opportunity to have a couple of people join us who do processing of kind of emotions and well-being and talk through some of this. So whether we opened or not, we still wanted them to have that opportunity to kind of bring us forward. It's something that Kirkwood's Early Childhood Center did, and it was really helpful and beneficial to them. So I think just being cognizant of how they feel and trying to find supports for them is part of how we would all work together. Mm-hmm. So I agree with all that you said though, Sandy. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Some of the other important points, first of all,
John, just before you, apologies for interrupting. So how many of the staff actually want to return? Do you have numbers in terms of those who want to return versus those who don't?
We didn't have it, write it down or note or anything like that. But when we did ask that question definitively, we don't want to take option one to the board if the staff is not on board with it. And we asked the question, or do you guys want to return? Is this something that you would definitively do? And overwhelmingly, the majority there was yes. Again, we didn't take a poll and ask, not wanting to put people on the spot, but and then we did say that if you did have some further concerns or worries, or we're not comfortable in this environment sharing your perspective, to reach out. And no one's reached out to me. I'm not sure if Marty, if you had anyone reach out to you. So again, we didn't take a survey and or count, but I could say from yesterday that no one spoke up, or we didn't hear any resounding no's of no, this is not what we want to do.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, John, please carry on.
That's okay. One of the points that Sandy and Marty touched on is that minimizing the adult to adult contact. And the structure of the school day, as was shared in that report, is that with the exception of the halftime team taught room, is that we wouldn't have more than one adult in the room with the children at the time. I think that is something that as we move forward, I personally would want us just to think about and revisit once we get going. Our ratios are really good, right in line with some of those other districts that I mentioned. Our numbers, the number of kids in the room, but they have also operated successfully with more than one staff member in the room. But right now, that's kind of the way we've designed it, with the exception of that team taught room and the early childhood special ed room, is that we'd have one adult with the children at the time. Enrollment would be based on when applications were received. So going back to when those came into the center, that's how we would prioritize who gets the first crack. We know that back in April, we had significantly more applications than we can accommodate, but we knew throughout the summer and then following our initial decision a couple of weeks ago that some people understandably have had to move on, but that's kind of the process that we would use. In meeting with Liz Keenan, the superintendent of special school district, she had meetings with superintendents all across the county, and she had said, however your programming is, whether it's in person, whether it's hybrid, or whether it's virtual, we would follow suit with our programming. So I see that as a benefit for the early childhood setting when working with those kids face to face. If we didn't increase enrollment capacities at any point, additional funding support would be needed. So again, because the program is self-funded in a lot of ways, if we didn't move those numbers, we would have to provide some additional support. And we outlined in the proposal our thoughts regarding that. But again, feel like to maintain a program and to keep that in place, that it's worth it. It's our district's preschool, and it's a good thing to do. And then we also, just an important point is that if we do have any staff member who wishes to resign from a position at that time, they have the opportunity to come back to that position in 21-22 without interview. They also have the opportunity to apply for a different position in our school district and return to the Ambrosia Center without interview within that same time frame. So trying to give as much flexibility to the staff as we can within kind of the limitations that we do have too. Shared with you are the alternatives to the proposal. One being to repurpose the staff through October 23rd. And I say October 23rd because that's kind of the first quarter for what is our K-12 kind of window for time. I shared with the board before that on October 9th that we're gonna return to you and make a recommendation for what we do the second quarter of the year. At that time, if you did not approve reopening Ambrose now, we would return to you with a recommendation for Ambrose as well. At that time, we also have to, based on our just current situation at the time, make decisions on any possible staffing changes. And that's in the pre-K through 12 space. And then the other alternative would be to furlough some staff at this time. So our strong recommendation obviously is to return with the conditions that have been listed here and in the document, consistent with the return to school plan that Marty had shared and is also posted in board docs. With that, we'll take any questions or comments that you have.
Okay, so I'm thinking we'll do the same sort of thing that we did before, which is I'm just going to go through and we'll give everybody a chance just to ask. And if we can keep it sort of initially just perhaps one question and a follow-up, and I'll sort of go down the list and then back up the list, so to speak. We'll give everybody a chance to sort of go and get initial questions in. And we'll do that, sort of a couple of times just to make sure everybody's got the questions that they need to have in. Once the questions have dried up, I'll see if there's a consensus in terms of a motion that somebody would like to make. And obviously when the motion is on the floor, then again, if anybody's got any questions or any comments they'd like to make before we vote on that, then I'll give an opportunity to do that as well. So I hope that works for everybody. And so with that in mind, Christine, can I start off with you?
Absolutely, thank you. I do not have a question, but I just wanted to thank you, John and Marty, for going back to the drawing board. I had shared with you, John, that I think that we are making decisions at breakneck speed and yet not fast enough, unfortunately.
Mhm.
But the thoughtfulness with which you're making decisions for our staff, for the center, for our teachers, for this, and most certainly for the students, I just really appreciate it. And I'm in favor of this thing.
Thank you, Christine, very much.
Okay, Amy? I don't know if Amy's, I know Amy's been, I know Amy is listening, but I don't know if she's able to get on at the moment to actually ask any questions. Otherwise, Amy, if you just want to send me a text if you've got any questions, and I will read them out for you as well. I can do it that way as well.
It looks like she jumped out, and she'll probably try to jump back in. She's been having some technical difficulties.
Okay, all right. We'll let her go. I'll come back to her in a second. Keita.
What is the protocol procedure? I don't know what the proper word is. What will happen if a teacher or student, God forbid, does test positive? What plans do you have in place?
Sandy, do you want to talk about that, or you want me? I'm fine either way.
Sure, no worries. Keita, we have instituted, actually we started it when we came back with our 12-month staff back in June-ish, where we started a process called contact tracing, which you guys have heard of. So typically what happens is if we have a student or staff member or whomever who has been exposed or contracted the virus, once we find out, then we put a call into that person or that family, find out the logistics, get the information, ensure that they're, of course, no longer not in the environment of the school. And then we get all of that data, and then we will notify St. Louis County of the information that we have. We also are asking the staff member or the student parent to notify their doctor so that we can use both of those medical opinions in order to determine what best next steps are. It depended upon the situation, we'll determine if we notify other people, if they were around people, which is why it's essential that we know who's in each room on what days, and we minimize as much adult contact as possible. So, how does Marty structure her day so that staff members really don't have any reasons to congregate in the main office or in the cafeteria or in the teacher's lounge, right? But that their breaks maybe are staggered, they have different times, and people are kind of functioning in silos. So if someone were to contract the virus, then we can clearly track their process. Who were they with? How long were they exposed to individuals? And then make decisions from there. But it's a science. It's not something that we are 100% great with, but we do employ St. Louis County Health Department and the medical professionals to help us to make those decisions. And we document every single component, and then we'll go from there. So each situation is different.
I guess I'm asking, and I apologize if this counts as a second question.
No, go ahead, please.
That was great information. I guess I should have been more specific. I'm asking, I guess, specifically if a particular teacher tests positive, what's the procedure for another teacher to take over, or you know what I'm?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I understand. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So Marty has it established, and her center is different. So the teacher assistants or aides, they actually have just as much knowledge and wherewithal with regard to the curriculum, et cetera. So the goal would be to utilize those individuals as support to go in, and then we find a replacement for the teacher assistants. We are also identifying some substitutes. Marty typically for the past couple of years has what we call an everyday sub, and that's a person, or it'll be more than one person this year, that's assigned to Ambrose to immediately step in and provide that support and cover. So it'll be our goal to add those additional teaching staff via the avenue of subs, as well as those teacher assistants who have that knowledge who can step in for that time frame for their teacher, because they plan together and they pretty much kind of know what's going on in the space. I hope I answered it that time.
Yeah, that's actually more so. Thank you.
Okay, Amy, are you on now? Can you speak?
I don't know. Can you hear me? I'm struggling here.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I do not have a question at the moment.
Okay, all right, that's great. Alan.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to start again as well, similar to Christine, and say thank you to Marty and to John for coming back with another plan. I think it's really important. I really appreciate the work that you guys have done to be thoughtful and try to get the center open. I think it's really important, and I am in support of the plan. But I was wondering, I don't know if John or you, Marty, who wants to walk us through it, but talk in a little bit more detail about the enrollment process and what that'll look like. I think I heard you say that you'll sort of go through who enrolled first, make sure they're going to take their spot, and just sort of fill up down the list. Is that right? I'm guessing families would be interested to know that that's actually what the process is.
Marty, you want to touch on that?
Sure. That is the plan right now. So children who had been enrolled last year and were re-enrolling would be the first ones because they've been here the longest. So we just have to kind of look at seniority, if you will. The other consideration often as we enroll new children with returning children has to do with siblings. So we would take a look at that as a possible criteria as well for the 2-year-old, typically 2-year-olds who have older siblings. And it has to be done quickly and people have to commit. We would ask families to either commit immediately, to take a pause. I know Kirkwood has been very successful in doing this, where parents could take a pause. They're not sure they want to start day one, but they're willing to pay for their spot, see how it goes for a week, and then join. Most have not done that because people needed their space and their slot. And then the third is to set up a priority preferred wait list. So anybody who had been enrolled and is unable to because of our limited spaces, there's a special list for these people who may not be able to get in because there's just not enough spaces at this time. But we wouldn't put them back on our normal wait list, which is much more lengthy. Does that make sense?
Yes. And sort of a follow-up, if you don't mind,
Please.
related somewhat. So when you go through that process, if you find that there isn't the need for the half-day rooms, or if there is less need from the full-day rooms and more interest in the half-day, do we have flexibility in the plan, just thinking about the number of spaces and rooms, to adjust between full-day and half-day if the demand would call for one or the other?
I would assume that we could take a look at adding that to a plan. That's not in our plan right now, Alan. Part of we wouldn't close a half-day room because of the need, I believe, for spaces for the children who do have IEPs and are served through special school district. So that half-day model has to remain in place for the children based on their IEP settings and goals. It may be possible, there's so few peers in the half-day classroom that it wouldn't really provide a lot of additional spots for somebody who wants full day. Because really there's what do we have, 5 or 6 children. So if in the classroom that's team taught, 5 or 6 children didn't enroll as peers, but we had additional children who wanted full day, could we figure out how to bridge the middle of the day? That is possible. We could take a look at that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Alex?
Yeah. So this is more specific to Walter Ambrose Family Center, but given obviously given the staff are going to be returning there physically, but you could easily include the entire Webster Grove staff in this question, as they're going to be busy throughout the day virtually. So is there any assistance being provided to the children or to the families of the teachers, given that they might have older children who need help throughout the day as well? And if not, are we looking into some options to support them?
Alex, that's a great question. That's a question that I've wrestled with a lot, as my team knows, and some of them have as well. At this point, we don't have a child care option for our staff's children or for our community's children of families that are in need. And I know that's a real need. With some of our staffing positions, we've been able to offer some flexibility because of the nature of their work, allows them to do it from a different location. And for other positions, they don't, it doesn't. And it's unfortunate, but it's one of those just realities. For example, our custodians have been back since April, and they've had children in schools since April, and so, but we need them here by the nature of the Ambrose programming being in person. That would be something that they'd have to figure out at this point. And I will say that I've gotten a variety of legal counsel. I've talked with districts. I'm still trying to figure out what's a way where we can support families and kids, and also do it in a safe way. So I appreciate you thinking about that. That is a burden on our staff, some of our staff, as well as our community's kids, families.
Yeah, that was my only question.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I've got a bunch of questions, but I'll just stick with a couple for right now. Are you going to give any preference to children from our more vulnerable populations? And are you going to give any preference to children who come in? I guess, do we special school district, are we required to include them first? Can you give me some thoughts on that, please?
Marty, you're probably best to start, just talk about special school district and how students are enrolled, or Head Start program. So can you do that?
Of course. We do, regardless of whether or not we're in a pandemic or any other time, we reserve slots in the Ambrose Family Center for all of the children who will come through during the year needing early childhood special education services. So those slots are held. We don't fill them with tuition paying children, because we know that they're coming in and they have a legal right, obviously, to that education. So those spots are held. We also have a partnership with Head Start, and we traditionally hold those spots, and we work the community trying to have families talk with other families, our parenting education staff and our social workers reach out to the community to find out children who and families who would be interested. So we maintain lists of families and have those slots. So actually, we're still providing them some services and trying to reach out and make sure that they know this is going to be available for them. So some of those spaces are being held as well.
Thank you, Marty.
Okay. All right. And so if those if you're filling all of those slots first, I mean, that's going to end up, and yet you've only got a limited number of spaces. I mean, is that how that's going to work, or have you reduced the number of slots that you're reserving?
I have sent a note to Head Start indicating that we're greatly reducing our available slots for all children, and so looking at that from a prorated view as well. Basically said we would try to get 10 children. Normally it's 15. And this year we had signed an agreement to raise it to 20, trying to increase that capacity. But given the reduced number of slots we have, we felt like we needed to consider that as well. It's a balancing act of Head Start, special school district, and tuition paying families.
Okay, thank you. And separate question, what's the protocol for mask wearing going to be? And I'm thinking both in terms of children while they're in school, and then also parents while they are dropping off children, and staff there. I think you dealt with staff already, and in terms of that mask wearing, whatever protocols you have, are you going to be able to enforce them?
We are having the policies, and when families are dropping off and picking up their children, it will be from an exterior door. We are saying that they are mandated to wear them. Our program is optional. So we will have masks available if they don't have them, but we're not going to expose our staff to parents coming up who are not wearing a mask. I don't think that's fair to our staff at all. And I will have those hard conversations with families. As far as children, we're doing the same thing, asking parents to bring their children, trying to get a mask on them, totally recognizing that you can have a meltdown at the moment, and as you enter school, that's not where we want to melt down. But we feel like it's our responsibility to help children become more and more comfortable wearing them. And I have tremendous faith in our staff that there's a way to do that that's honoring and kind and developmentally appropriate for young children.
Thank you. All right. Alex, I know you said you didn't have any more questions. Did you have anything else now? Okay, that's good. Alan.
I don't have any more questions either, David. Thank you.
Keita?
No, my other question was actually asked by Alan. So thanks, Alan.
Okay. Amy, nice to see you.
Thanks. I don't have any questions at this point.
Okay, Christine.
I only have a small question, I guess. Well, I don't know if it's small or big anymore, but for real. But hearing what you're saying about over the summer, it sounded like people were open and everything went okay, or as well as could have expected, or better. I remember hearing at the very beginning of this, and I know we're always getting new information about this novel coronavirus, but that fall and winter would be harder than the warmer months. And so I guess what I'm just curious is, are you willing to say, you know what, we will review this if we get information from the county or state, federal levels that says that it may be unsafe?
Thank you, Christine. Absolutely. I think we're having to review and adapt and change quite a bit, as you know, and you've been asked to as board members, but we have an obligation to be monitoring data, monitoring research, monitoring information, and making decisions based on what we know at the time, the best that we know at the time. And so I think, you know, while I'm hopeful that we can continue on, if we had to make a change based on that information, we would certainly do so, and we wouldn't wait until October 23rd to do so. So absolutely, that we will continue to be reevaluating.
Okay, I have a couple of other questions, but I want to just sort of, is there any other board member who has any more questions they'd like to ask before I ask those? Okay, I don't see anybody. And these questions are actually a little bit sort of contradictory. One of the things that was important, I think, to all the board members when we talked before was just sort of the health and safety. And as we looked at this before, we sort of said, really, if we didn't see an improvement in, or we needed to see an improvement in health and in outcomes before we came back and revisited this. And I'm conscious that what you've done is you said, okay, we're not going to come back with that plan. We're going to come back with something that tries to reflect the safety of the children. And I appreciate that you are doing that. But I mean, everything that I'm reading seems to be going still in the other direction. I'm hearing more about children actually can get infected, younger children can get infected, that even if you're asymptomatic, there are potential issues in terms of, particularly sort of heart issues and things like that. Have you seen, just in terms of where we are now, have you seen anything that leads you to believe that that the health situation has changed? I can't hear you, John.
Thank you very much. I would say nothing really large about the health situation. I felt last time when brought the proposal to you that the situation at the time that we could do this based on that health information. And I obviously in St. Louis County, as of late, with the exception of I think today or yesterday, the data has trended more favorably. I pulled the St. Louis County data, and it shows the age group 9 years and younger are the group that is least affected based on what is known and what is tested. And so I can't say that there's any new information. I'm aware of a lot of the different studies. I'm aware of the study of the 100 children that was referenced and talked about a lot, but I also, have awareness of other studies and research done with many larger groups of kids and stuff like that. So, I didn't feel if I felt from the last meeting that alone was what, was the ultimate decision, non-negotiable, and it wasn't the interrelatedness of all these factors, I would have never come back to you with another proposal.
Okay.
May I add something, David?
Absolutely.
I started thinking about the number of preschools and childcare centers that have stayed open throughout this entire pandemic, because there are obviously categories of workers who have no choice but to go to work. And in our community, we started looking at how many, certainly in St. Louis, but even closer, how many centers have stayed open and with what kind of success and have not closed. And so just off the top of my head, I came up with 9 different programs that have continued to operate. And that does not include the school districts that operated. So I recognize that you're making a decision clearly as a school district, and we're not a little bit, we're a lot different, but we're still part of the district. But childcare centers are operating in our community and all over the country because they have to support families. And that's just the nature of our work. And the whole point about virtual learning doesn't meet the needs of our community, I think is where we come from. But I just want to add that there are many, right off the top of our head, we had nine programs that have continued to operate, if that adds any information to your question.
And Marty, that's 9 within kind of a stone's throw, so to speak, right? 9 around us that you're talking about?
I'm looking at my list. Yes, there's one I counted that's in Central West End. I counted the Y programs, which actually accounts for many centers that have been open, as well as some school age stuff. But the rest of them would be serving Webster, Kirkwood. Webster and Kirkwood. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and I also appreciate what you said before in terms of an answer to Christine's question, in terms of if things don't go in the right direction, what you'll do there. And so I appreciate your response to that. So the other question I have, which is, I say, is somewhat contradictory to that, which is, do you think you're going to be able to use lessons learned here to perhaps allow us to find a safe way to open at least sort of kindergarten and first grade in a safe manner? And I understand there are issues in terms of staff availability and things like that, but is there something we hope to be able to learn that might allow us those grades back?
Well, I would say absolutely. I would say that we're not approaching the preschool like they're paving the way or they're test guinea pigs for a K-12 setting. But I think in Webster Grove School District, now we've had we've had 125 staff back for a while now. About this number Sandy gave me, our athletic programs successfully functioning for 5 or 6 weeks without any kind of transmission from student to student or staff to student, anything like that. But I do think that in an educational setting, that we will learn quite a bit. It'll be the first place that implements, again, Marty's aligned her protocols on different things with ours, adapted it to her setting. But there's a lot from just, again, contextually that will help us to problem solve how to make the preschool even better, but will apply to the other settings as well. And like most people, we know that and again, children are different, but overall, the younger children are going to have a more difficult time in the virtual experience. And if we can start bringing kids, kind of like to Christine's point, if the data, if it reaches a certain level, would we go back and be more restrictive, or possibly, yes, kind of the other way. If the data trends more favorably, or we demonstrate that we can bring some kids in or start bringing back some of our levels earlier than a predetermined deadline, then that's something I think we have a responsibility for their education to consider. And I do think having what we're doing, what we would be doing at Ambrose would contribute to us being able to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. So does anybody have, so what I'm going to do, anybody got any more questions first? Then what I'll do, I'll go through, and if everybody wants to offer a statement, anything they want to share, if it's just, I support the plan, and I've heard a lot of you say already you support the plan, anything they want to say, then I will look for a motion as to what we might do, and then if necessary, we'll have any further commentary on that. So I hope if that's okay with everybody. So I'll start off again in the order we start off with the first. So Christine, anything you would like to say at all at this point?
I think I've said what I wanted to say, although I would just add that I hope we listen to staff and take care of staff who decide that they don't want to come back, and show compassion. And I think I heard this question asked in a previous meeting, but knowing that there were staff at Ambrose who were sick in the past, I would just, again, show compassion and extreme care and concern for staff who do return.
Absolutely.
I have a separate question, and I'm going to send it to you, Sandy, about benefits. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Amy?
Yeah, I support the plan. I actually supported the previous plan, though I could not attend the last meeting. To me, this is a very different decision than the one we had to make about K-12, because the reality of the situation is that, as has been discussed, Ambrose families choose to send their children there. They don't have to, unlike K-12, where they're required to attend school. Preschool is optional, and we know those families are going to be looking for childcare somewhere. And I was not comfortable, and I'm still not comfortable with effectively taking that decision away from not only the parents, but also from the staff at Ambrose who want to be there. And by deciding not to open, we've taken that choice away from them. And preschool is a fairly short amount of time that families are there. And, once they hear we're not opening, they're going to go elsewhere. And I think that the loss of those families and the loss of the support that has been built at Ambrose for Ambrose over a period of time could potentially be devastating for that program. And I know, not many, I think just me and Alan are the only board members who have actually experienced Ambrose Center for our own kids. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, it's the best, most innovative place in our entire school district. And the idea of losing it as a casualty of COVID, and I'm one who's been very conservative in terms of not wanting to risk anybody's health or safety, and particularly considering that we've lost staff members at Ambrose who I personally knew and cared about a lot. So I don't say this lightly, but at the end of the day, it's not ideal. None of this is ideal, but I don't want to take that choice away from our teachers and our families. So I support it. And thank you for coming back and trying again.
Thank you.
Okay, Kita?
Once again, fellow board members pretty much said everything I was going to say. Thanks, Amy.
Sorry.
I support it as well, and for the same reasons. I have been in a position, I shared with John before, that I've been in a position where childcare was an issue. I don't have a job where I have the option to work from home, and I've been in that position, and the stress was overwhelming for me. In addition to that, as I feel a lot better knowing that at least the majority of the staff or the ones that want to come back do want to come back, and that we are, like Christine said, taking care of, or at least giving an option to staff who maybe are a little bit less enthusiastic about coming back. I would hate to be in a position to try to choose between my health safety and my economic safety. So, and for all the reasons, the program is good. I did have a child go through there briefly. She was on the upper age level, so she was only there briefly, but she did enjoy it. She remembers. She's a junior in high school now, and she still remembers things from Ambrose. So I am definitely in favor of it as well.
Thank you. Alan?
Thanks, David. Yeah, I am absolutely in favor. I think if I could just say ditto to everything Amy said, she pretty much captured all of it. But I think, for me, it's no surprise I was disappointed, and I supported the last plan. So I was disappointed that that didn't pass. But for me, like Amy, this decision is different, right? This is a choice for our families whether to attend or not. And I know that because it serves working parents primarily, that as Kita alluded to, these families are scrambling for care. They've been scrambling for care since we took the vote on July 31st. So I want to give them that option and not take that option away from them. I think that's incredibly important. And if we don't open it, I think that the long-lasting impact on the program, on the families, on the enrollment, losing some of the wonderful staff is going to be devastating. And for me, preschool is such an important way to sort of close that opportunity gap and to sort of lead with an equity lens to help kids get a head start on their education. I think it's incredibly important. So I absolutely support it. And just as a little personal note, I was getting my son, Evan, as you guys all know, he's heading into his last year at Ambrose, getting him dressed the other day. I'm like, Evan, go pick out a shirt. What do you want to wear? He went to his closet, thumbed around, came back with his Ambrose shirt. It's like, I want to wear my Ambrose shirt because I miss Ambrose. So yes, I support it. Thank you.
Okay. And Alex?
All right. So I guess what I'll say is, on the other end, being one that was not in favor of the last plan, I think the things that that I wasn't a big fan of is I don't think the numbers of students were small enough. John stated that the surrounding daycares, preschools have numbers that are more in line with the plan now. And so that, given some of the recent findings that David actually spoke to of, maybe children are able to carry this even though they might not have symptoms, they're carriers. And so it's putting the staff at risk in that last plan. That was something that concerned me quite a bit about the last plan. Also, the fact that in this plan now we're giving the staff options whether or not they feel comfortable to return. If they don't feel comfortable, if they have situations at home where they just can't leave, then now they have that opportunity to stay at home. They'll have an option to come back next year without an interview. So I think there's a lot of things, even though I think both plans are similar. I think the changes that were made from Marty, Dr. Simpson, and everyone that's helped, I think they're great. I really appreciate all the work that's gone into them, and I'm in favor of the new plan.
Okay, thank you. So I mean, I will say that as I look at this, I mean, I look at what we're being asked to do here. I mean, it's a microcosm of what we're being asked to do as a society, and you're trying to balance all of these issues, trying to balance safety issues against the needs of families who've got to go back to work. You've got all of those sorts of things. And I'm also very conscious of our commitment to pre-K education as being, especially for our most vulnerable populations, as being a key thing there. And I'm conscious that, as Amy so eloquently pointed out, that a decision not to offer the opportunity to open Ambrosia in some manner this time could lead to, it's certainly going to hurt it in the short term and could have some long-term consequences. And I'm stuck balancing that against the safety issues. And for me personally, I mean, I still, as I alluded to before, I still think the safety issues to me are paramount. And so whereas I certainly appreciate the work that's been done, and there are clearly some improvements there, I still have a hard time moving forward with this. That said, I hear the rest of the board, and it's clear that I'm much more reluctant to do this. I mean, everybody else is making making decisions, trying to balance all these difficult things. They're coming sort of slightly over one side. I'm coming slightly over the other. And so, what I would say is, if the board passes this, I will work with John, with Marty, with the rest of the board to ensure that we do this in the best way possible.
David, can
Yes,
I add
please.
something just real quick? And
Absolutely.
I first just wanted to say thank you to everybody, the board and the administrators. I think from a Board of Education, I think I'm so proud to work with people who always put kids at the center and egos to the side. And certainly we, again, like some of you articulate the differences in these proposals, we're difference makers, and we listened and we learned. And so anyway, I just want to thank you for leading and governing in a way that's child-centered, that ego and power is not the driver, because I said, no, why are you coming back with a proposal? I just really appreciated that. And again, we already echoed Marty, and kudos to some of my other team members, but both Pam and Sandy dedicated days. We did days, and what looks very simple on a sheet, days of work. And it meant a lot to us, but I also wanted to give some props their way. So with that.
Okay. So if nobody has any other questions, I will entertain a motion with regard to the plans that have been proposed here.
David, I make a motion that we approve the reopening plan of the Walter Ambrose Family Center as revised and presented here tonight.
I second.
Okay. And so does anybody have any, before we call for a vote, does anybody have any further comments they'd like to make? If not, I will ask the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. And that will pass. All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Thank you, as John says, thank you everybody for your hard work on that. And I say, yeah, we will work as a board. We will work to support you in every way that we can to make this a complete success.
Thank you, Marty, very much. Appreciate all your hard work, and enjoy your family.
Thank you to you, to the board, to Pam and Sandy. The work was unbelievable. And I want to thank our staff too. So I'm excited to see families and children again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is a letter from the proposal or suggestion that the board sends a letter to legislatures. We've talked in prior board meetings about, I mean, there's clearly been a lack of leadership at all levels of government in terms of how schools should work on this. And so, Christine, I'm going to ask you to lead us on this, please.
Sure. And for all of the reasons you said, and as we listened to everything last week and just felt so frustrated, I mentioned that I had heard from a board member in New City, and they were writing a letter to representatives in the county and to federal from their area. And so I got that letter in the past week, and I've shared it with everybody. I hope you've had a chance to read it. It was George Leonard from New City who wrote it, and he had a lot of questions from his board members.
Christine, it's very hard to hear you. Can you? I don't know if you can get closer to a microphone or something like that. You're cutting in and out.
Well, I wonder if that's my Wi-Fi. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Better. Yes, thank you.
I'll talk slower, maybe. It was George Leonard from U City who wrote the letter, and I hope you've had a chance to read it. He did have help. They revised it as a team, and it was shared with me. And I guess my first question is simply, is there an interest to use our influence as elected leaders to address this public health issue, this crisis that we are opening our schools under?
Okay, so again, I'd ask if any board members have any thoughts just to that question.
I am personally on board. I love the idea. If we can have any influence whatsoever, I am all for it. I agree with everyone else. The leadership in this, for some reason, is lacking. I mean, we're having to make decisions, which we should as a school board and a school district. However, I mean, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants with no help from, the people who are supposed to be helping us make these decisions. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'd agree with Keita. I read the letter. I thought it was really well written, really well articulated about just where we feel that, I guess federally and at a state level, we've been let down. And so now we're stuck having to make decisions. And by we, I mean John and his staff are making, decisions based off medical information. And, I don't think he or anyone thought that would ever happen.
True.
Yeah, I would just like to add, I read the letter too. I thought it was well done. I am supportive of the concept, as others have probably heard me say. In a really unfortunate way, school districts have left to be the only adults in the room when it comes to the managing of this pandemic for some reason. I'm not sure why that is, but it's an unfortunate turn of events. Like you said, Alex, John's had to, earn an honorary medical degree in order to get school going this year. So kudos to you for that. My only comment about the letter, and I mentioned this to Christine as well, I think I'm very supportive of it. I think we should also consider sending it to our state leadership as well. I don't think that, you said he did that, but I think we should include our state leadership on the letter as well.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. This letter is to county council, correct? And I feel like they've done a pretty good job under they're one of the few governing bodies that actually has provided leadership on this topic. So my question would be, do we want to complain to them, or do we want to complain to at the state level and up? I don't know that it's fair to Lisa Clancy to say, we demand that you do these things, when I feel like she's done her part.
So I can say that I listened to the board meeting at U City, and they decided to send it to their county rep as well as their federal leaders. They had originally wanted to send it to state, and then I don't remember who it was on the board who said something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing, state isn't acting on any of this right now. But I don't know that that's a reason not to send it to the state, to be quite honest. And I would agree that directed. This was an example. Certainly, that was one of the other questions, though, Amy, was to whom should we send it?
I'd rather send it to Parsons, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, Amy. I would say we send it to Parson, we CC, Bessie, and then also CC our 2 members of the US Senate, our US Congressperson, and then we can CC the county council as well if we want to. But I would address it to the governor and the Department and Desi.
And we have 2 comments.
And I actually, is Christine speaking? Is she trying to speak? Christine, are you trying to say something?
No, I had just added that we have 2 Congress, we have two House reps in our district.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm definitely for the upper echelon. And I'm wondering if we can perhaps add a small paragraph with some verbiage about actually returning to in-person learning. Despite all of this, I'm still hear rumors of funding cuts, and I'm thinking, well, if you all are trying to push this agenda so much, then why not reallocate some of those funds for PPE? I mean, our teachers are going to be frontline workers, so to speak. They're, the students, if it's so important, as you say, that we go back to school, then let's, when we get ready to do it, make sure we have extra funding available for schools to provide extra cleaning, extra sanitary things, PPE for teachers and students. I don't know, maybe that's a whole separate letter, but to me, if this is your thing, and then let's do it the right way.
So can I make a suggestion? I think, again, I mean, as I look at it, I think I am supportive of the idea of sending something. I've been sort of, we've had various other proposals come before us that I haven't felt were particularly related to the district. We're still on important issues, but I've always sort of tried, my personal view has been that the board should send letters out and things that are directly related to what we're doing. This is so clearly falls into that. I'm completely supportive. Could I suggest perhaps that Christine and 2 other board members go away? If people want to send suggestions as to the wording, and perhaps go back and come to the next meeting with a draft of the language for the board, would that be? I think rather than our trying to go and edit it on the fly here, I think that if we can have 3 members of the board, so not a majority of the board, but 3 members of the board go and work on this and then come back to the full board. And I'd encourage you obviously to get Dr. Simpson and any of his staff who want to offer opinions, but not using too much of their time because they're already working ludicrous hours. Does that seem like a reasonable way to proceed with this?
Yes, and I nominate Alan.
And Keita, would you like to be part of that? Or is that you sticking your hand up saying you'd like to be part of that?
I'm happy to help.
And Christine, you're okay leading that?
I do have a question procedurally though, because I do think expediency is key here because things are changing so quickly and so often, and it will be helpful to get this out soon. Do we have to vote on it? And could we get it out? Could we decide now that we want to get out the letter and get it out, even if we vote next time or something like that? And I guess I'm just asking procedurally, what do we have to do here?
I think you could just, the board's all in agreement that it's a good idea. I would just circulate it to us via email. And if anybody has any edits, they can suggest them.
Get it out.
And then the 3 of you can go and redraft it. Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, the only question I have is just, being that you cities doing this, we're doing this, like, is there any, truth to power in numbers? Like, do we want to reach out to any other districts that were I feel like there's a group of districts that we'll get together with for the legislative advocacy meetings. I mean, do we want to reach out to their school board presidents maybe or something and just say, hey, this is what we're doing? I don't know if we want to include them on the letter, but maybe just say, hey, this is what we're doing.
Yeah, Alex, that's a good point. And I know that the U City board president, I believe it was the board president, had said that they would send it to that legislative breakfast group. And I don't know, John, if you've received anything through them, but they also mentioned they would send it to the PLC, the board, the regional board PLC, and I haven't received anything through that.
I haven't yet.
Okay. So I might.
I'm happy to help in any way. with that, reaching out to people.
Thank you. And John, I should mention, John did edit the letter to our district so that we're set there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So am I right in thinking our next board meeting is on the 27th?
That's the next scheduled one, but we've been having them at quite a rate lately. I don't know if we'll get that far down the road.
Alex, yeah, no, we have that. So, all right, well, so okay,
Probably.
So yeah, so Christine, if I guess, yeah, so if people want to send any proposed edits back to Christine, and then she and Keith and Alan will go through, we'll send out a draft to the board. If anybody has any strong feelings about it, we can we'll get together and we'll bring it back at the next board meeting. Amy,
No,
am I okay doing it like that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And I assume John will be looped in as well.
Yes. Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep.
All right. Okay, so I think marching orders on that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Christine, for bringing that to the board's attention and for spearheading that. At this point, any more comments on that before I move on to the next item? Okay, at this point, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All right. I will motion to approve the consent agenda items 5.01, 5.02, 5.03, and 5.04.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that passes. At this point, I will entertain a motion to move into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
We actually need to say, so we'll
Oh.
recess into executive session with the purpose of discussing personnel and legal matters. Now you can so move.
So moved.
All right. All in favor? I'm sorry. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay. And can I have a roll call vote, please, to move into executive session?
Yes, Mr. Addison,
Yes.
Mr. Khan,
Yes.
Mr. Todd,
Yes.
Ms. Keller,
Yes.
Ms. Quinn,
Yes.
Ms. Clendenin.
Yes.
Okay. We are recessed into executive session. Bill, if you can take down the video, and then we will let you know when we are done.
Okay, just give me a second.